I recently found myself thinking about one of my clients who is the youngest of three boys. Now, his two older siblings were brilliant, academically talented, athletically talented, and on paper, mightily accomplished at a young age. As a result, they seem to get all of the attention from mom and dad, the neighbors, the coaches, even my client's peers respected and admired his two older brothers. But what really stood out was that his older brothers especially got attention, validation, love from my client's dad. And somewhere along the way, without even realizing it, my client made a decision at a very young age. I'll show them. I'll prove them wrong. I'll prove to them I'm worthy. I'll become successful enough that nobody overlooks me again. And here's the dangerous part about those beliefs that form. The fascinating part. That decision worked. It helped my client to outwork everybody around him, starting at a young age. It helped him build a business, make a lot of money, accomplish feats that very few in the world accomplish. It helped him become somebody that other people respect and admire. But when we first met, he was 40 years old. His business had been growing. He's got tens of millions of dollars to his name. Yet he still wakes up every day feeling like he's behind, like he hasn't done enough, like he needs to do more. Because the goal was never really success for him. The goal was proving to his dad and his siblings that he was enough and worthy of love and attention just like his older brothers. And when your success is built on proving yourself, no amount of success ever feels enough. If any part of that story sounds familiar, today's episode is for you. Because today we're talking about one of the most common and most costly destructive patterns among high performers, building an extraordinary life fueled by a desperate need to prove that you are worthy. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstuck High Performer Podcast. I'm so grateful you're here. My name is Paul Salter. I'm the host of the show. I'm also a high performance hypnotherapist and mindset coach who specifically works with CEOs, executives, entrepreneurs, and ambitious professionals just like you who feel stuck in a cycle of self-sabotage, stuck in a cycle of underperforming relative to your potential. And it's my goal through our work together to identify, uncover, and then help you unlearn the toxic emotions, the destructive patterns of feeling, believing, thinking, and behaving that are keeping you stuck. Every Monday, I go solo. I do a deep dive, speaking directly to you, your challenges, your internal dialogue, frustration, and angst and fear. Every Thursday, I have an incredible guest join me for a vulnerable, raw, honest, and candid conversation about the trade-offs, challenges, and difficulties around achieving and sustaining next level success. And today, we're diving in to a vulnerable conversation around that unsustainable fuel source that has been fueling your success. This desperate energy needing to prove yourself to someone, to prove to yourself or others that you're worthy of love, attention, acceptance. And the core theme of today's conversation is simply this. The most dangerous part about this prove it energy I've begun to describe is that it works. It gets you promoted. It helps you make money. It helps you build the company. But eventually, the very fuel source that built your success becomes the thing preventing you from experiencing peace, fulfillment, joy, ease, and freedom. I want to circle back to the client I introduced you to moments ago, give you a little bit more color into his background, upbringing, and the current situation he was experiencing when our paths first crossed. So, as I mentioned, my client was the youngest of three boys. He grew up with a strict father with a strong military background, as well as now a present entrepreneurial journeyman himself. His father was competitive. His siblings were incredibly competitive with each other, and they were a good chunk older, 8 years and 5 years older, respectively. And like I alluded to earlier, his siblings, brilliant, very strong academically, very strong athletically. And my client was always being driven to and fro his older siblings' events, extracurriculars, and sporting activities. And he felt like he was always trying to keep up, to stand out. He always felt like the lowest priority, last on the list. And like most young boys, he was desperate for his dad's attention, affection, validation. And as I shared with you at an early age, unbeknownst to him, he made a decision that he would prove to his dad he was good enough, he was worthy, he was just like, if not better, academically and athletically than his two older brothers. As a result of that decision, my client flourished. Academically, he got straight A's, had an incredible GPA. He lettered in 2 varsity sports throughout his time in high school, and he joined the military. And during his 15-year career, he spent the majority of it in a special forces branch of the military. Again, on paper, I mean, as a high schooler and then early young man, checking all of the boxes of success, joining the military, joining the elite special forces branch of that particular branch of the military, all straight A's. Externally, everything looked great. Internally, he never felt enough. He never got words from his dad or the sense that his dad was truly proud of him. And when we first connected, he described his relationship with his dad some 20 years later as strained, surface level at best. At the point that our paths first crossed, my client was worth tens of millions of dollars. He had a successful 15-year career in the military, yet he felt empty. He had yet to have a romantic relationship work out. He didn't have kids, 2 things that he wanted, and he struggled to let people into his life. He couldn't explicitly name a best friend. And one of the underlying reasons he reached out to me was he noticed he began feeling lost and disconnected from himself. But again, on paper, he had checked all the boxes of success as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a son. And he still felt empty. Trying to prove someone wrong, it's like rocket fuel. Trying to prove you're not enough, like rocket fuel. It burns hot, it creates massive acceleration, it can absolutely get you off the ground. But rocket fuel was never designed to power the entire journey. It creates immense heat, immense pressure, as well as massive wear and tear. Eventually, something breaks. Your health, your marriage, your peace, your joy, and sometimes even the one thing you love and have built, your business. Fulfillment-driven achievement is different. It's a sustainable fuel source. It may not create the same explosive acceleration initially, but it allows you to travel further, longer, and with significantly less damage. And many high performers, they confuse acceleration with sustainability. Just because a fuel source helped you build success doesn't mean it's healthy enough to help you sustain it and enjoy it. And I want to pivot our conversation to talking about just how detrimental, destructive it will continue to be if you continue operating with this need to prove yourself energy as your primary fuel source. The first key point I want to address is if this is you, if you resonate with the story I shared about my client, if you know deep down that you're being fueled by this need to prove yourself, well, let me be very candid with you. No achievement will ever feel enough. The problem isn't that you haven't achieved enough. The problem is that you have been asking achievement to do a job it was never designed to do. You've been asking achievement to provide the feelings of validation, recognition, love, and being seen that was missing when you were younger. So when you achieve something and those internal holes in your heart, in your soul, in your being are still present, you quickly move the goalposts even further, convincing yourself that the next achievement will finally help you to feel how you desire and plug those holes. Yet, let me remind you, because you logically probably know and understand it, external achievement cannot solve an internal wound. Again, external achievement cannot solve an internal wound. If you're listening to this episode, I have an imagination that on paper, your life looks pretty damn successful. Yet, your internal dialogue is often filled with thoughts and feelings such as, why am I feeling anxious? Why am I restless? Why do I still feel behind? Why can't I enjoy what I've built? When you stop trying to prove yourself to others and start moving towards a goal for you, those questions fade and they give way to peace, lightness, and ease. So I have another client of mine I've been working with, and for the last, I want to say 8 years in a row, he is a financial wealth asset manager. He has made the President's Club, the firm he's associated with, rewards the top performers. And for, again, I believe it's 8 years in a row, he has always made this, which of course comes with more perks, bonuses, and trips and whatnot. And last year, and we've been working together for about a year at that point, he made some significant changes to the infrastructure of his businesses. He's got multiple businesses. He's got a couple side hustles that have really grown and come to fruition. He's a husband, a father of 2. And we made a lot of changes internally. And he noticed the last 3 months of the year, he was not quite on pace to make President's Club. Yet, fascinatingly enough, he was well aware that he had been working less and having more fun. But he felt a need to prove himself. He had to make that club. It's what he'd always done. He had some kind of unwritten competition with other individuals associated with the firm. So the last 3 months of the year, he reverted back to some of his old patterns and tendencies. And I'm here to tell you, he made President's Club again, but at a cost. Marital strain, less time with his kids, unnecessary work stress and conflict, not only being experienced during the workday, but being brought home with him in the evenings, on the weekends. And as we worked through that and we reflected and we extracted the learning lessons and began to identify some of the core beliefs that fueled that behavior, one of the key shifts we began to make was measuring success differently. Look, society convinces us that every year we should be scaling, we should be bringing in more money, having an even greater impact. And that sounds great. It's a noble, ambitious goal. But at some point, it will become counterproductive. So the shift we made with my client that I just referenced was changing how not only we defined success in his businesses, but how we measured it. And the approach we took was measuring his hourly rate. Could he work on average 10 less hours per week this year and still make roughly the same amount of money? How would working 10 fewer hours a week change your marriage, change your relationship with your kids, change your health, your well-being, your company culture? There are different ways to define and measure success. The second point I want to make is when you are reliant on that prove it energy, success often feels heavy instead of fulfilling. And you, as a byproduct of that, become emotionally fragile. What do I mean? Well, you place so much importance or weight into every deal, launch, conversation, or setback that if one of those occurs, it makes you feel, or one of those fails rather, it makes you feel less than and unworthy, thus really just validating this false belief that you're not worthy of love or you're not enough. And this only fuels your desire to problem solve by working more, by doing more. And it just becomes this perpetual pattern that gets you further and further off track from yourself and your goals. When your success becomes proof of being worthy enough, whether that be for mom or dad's attention or standing out amongst your siblings or your peers, failure becomes identity threatening. Criticism becomes personal. Rejection becomes devastating, and mistakes become evidence that you are not worthy or enough. And collectively, this creates anxiety, overthinking, perfectionism, hypervigilance, and emotional exhaustion. You shift to a place of needing success for validation versus wanting it. And that creates suffering. And every setback or perceived failure makes you question if it's a direct reflection of yourself. And let me say this clearly. Another year of repeating the same pattern, the same over-reliance on this prove-it energy is incredibly costly. It's expensive. If you know you're capable of more, but you're struggling to let go of this pattern, you're struggling to find an alternative fuel source, you're struggling to feel a sense of peace, ease, fulfillment, happiness, or validation, these are the exact type of challenges that I help my clients overcome with private one-on-one coaching. And if you'd like to explore what it would be like to work together, there is a link in the show notes, an application to apply for one-on-one private coaching with me. And I look forward to meeting you there. The third point I want to make about how destructive reliant on this prove-it energy is simply this. You can never turn off. And I spoke about this at length in episode 164 of the show. The title of the episode is The Hidden Cost of Always Being On. I strongly encourage you to go listen to that episode next. Even if you listened to it before, go back again. It's going to hit a little differently the second time around. But in short, you can't ever turn off if you feel this need to prove yourself, because the only way to prove yourself is to continue producing. And this leads to being addicted to your phone, always available by phone call or email, always on, whether it be at dinner, during date night, your children's activities, or even on family vacations. And if that resonates, do you wonder why you feel so disconnected and burnt out? Like, you may leave work physically, but you never leave psychologically. And this is costing you. The fourth and final key point I want to make is it's costing you financially, relationally, and on an identity level. Let's start with relationally. This reliance on I need to prove myself energy is likely leading to you rarely being present. Sure, you might be physically there with your spouse, with your children, but mentally you're chasing that next achievement. Your wife likely feels unseen, unheard, like she's second place. Your children likely feel dad is busy, dad is distracted, dad is always working. And your intentionality here, oh, I'm providing them a better future, I'm providing them security, stability. Your intentionality means nothing here. I'm going to tell you a quick story. And this is actually from a conversation from a podcast I already recorded. It'll come out either late June or early July. So maybe right around this, because I'm recording this ahead of time. But long story short, it is a conversation and a story shared from Steve Eckert when we're talking about fatherhood. And Steve grew up with a very absentee alcoholic father. He goes on to say and share more that him and his dad never had a conversation. So here he is, early into fatherhood. His firstborn, his son, is about 3 months old. And Steve is working tirelessly, relentlessly around the clock. He's working at a gym that him and his wife own. And he's working very long hours, 7 days a week. And there's a moment he comes home early one afternoon and his wife is like, oh my goodness, like, here, hold your son. Like, let me take a picture so your son knows, like, hey, daddy was always working so hard for you. And deep down, that moment crushed Steve, because he realized, although his intention was different than his dad's, his dad was an absentee alcoholic, Steve was trying to create a future for his family. His son was going to get the same message that he got. Dad is busy, distracted, always working. And it was in that moment, and Steve will tell you much more as you listen to that conversation, radical internal shifts began to take place. Radical different shifts in his behaviors began to take place. And the life he has created today, the father he has become today, absolutely incredible. I can't wait until you have the opportunity to listen to that conversation. But again, the point being, your intention means nothing. If you are mentally distant, not present, your children pick up on that. Period. And that's all they internalize. And lastly, this cost on an identity level. Like, look, I want you to really reflect on how you would answer this question. If I took away your business, your title, your revenue, a list of all of your accomplishments tomorrow, who would you be? And perhaps the most devastating cost of all is that you continuously sacrifice the present moment, chasing a future feeling that you will never catch. Your life becomes one giant conditional statement. I'll be happy when. And when never arrives. So you rob yourself of the enjoyment of life. And I want to remind you once more that the most dangerous part of this type of prove it energy is that it does work. It gets you promoted, it helps you make the money, it helps you build the company. But eventually that fuel source that built your success becomes the single thing preventing you from experiencing the peace, the fulfillment, the ease, the joy, the freedom that you say you're working towards. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question that may be uncomfortable, but it has the power to change your life. Who would you be if you stopped trying to prove yourself? Not who would you become? Who are you already? Because at some point, the fuel that helps you survive, compete, and succeed, it becomes too expensive to keep using. The irony is that many of the most successful people I've worked with didn't become more fulfilled when they achieved more. They became more fulfilled when they stopped needing their achievements to tell them who they are. Listen, you can still be ambitious. You can still pursue massive goals. You can still build, create, lead, and win. But there's a profound difference between chasing success because you need it to validate your worth and pursuing success because it aligns with who you are and what matters most to you. One path leads to exhaustion, the other leads to freedom. And perhaps the next level of your success isn't found in working harder. Perhaps it's found in finally putting down the weight of trying to prove that you were enough all along. I hope this conversation hit hard today. My ask is simple. If you found today's conversation valuable, share it. Share it with the friend, the peer, the coworker who you know needs this wake-up call, needs to hear this message. If this episode really hit, take that seriously. Take a moment and imagine your life 1, 3, 5, 10 years down the road. If nothing changes and you continue to rely on this prove it energy, where does that leave you? If you're ready to change fuel sources, if you're ready to break free, to finally experience that fulfillment, that peace, that ease, that joy and validation you've been craving, and it's time to take action, I invite you to use the link in the show notes below to apply for one-on-one coaching so I can help you get unstuck, lock in, and level up. Thank you for listening. Make today great, and I'll catch you in the next episode.